The deep hum of the aurora filled every corridor. The ship moved like a silver arrow through the dark emptiness of space. Inside, the crew worked in silence, each person focused on their task. Everyone knew that a single mistake could bring the attention of Commander Mara, and no one wanted that. Mara was not an old woman, but her eyes carried the weight of many years in space. She had short dark hair, sharp features, and a voice that cut through the air like steel. She spoke quickly, and her words always had purpose. If someone did something wrong, she would point it out in a way that left no doubt who was in charge. She was not cruel, but she was strict, and her crew feared disappointing her. In the control room, Mara stood behind the main pilot's seat. "Adjust the course by 0.02 degrees, she said firmly. The pilot nodded without looking back. The correction was small, but to Mara, small things mattered. Small mistakes could grow into disasters in space. 2 alien officers worked at nearby stations. They were from the Vereen, a reptilian species with green skin and wide golden eyes. Even they kept their voices low when Mara was in the room. One of them, First Officer Raal, glanced at her for approval before sending a message to engineering. She gave a small nod, and that was enough to make him relax. Mara believed discipline was the only thing that kept people alive beyond Earth. She had seen ships lost because of carelessness. She had walked through silent wrecks, the air cold, the walls scorched. She had no interest in letting the Aurora join them. This was why she kept her crew sharp. Her reputation spread beyond the ship. Other captains called her the Iron Voice. Traders and station workers told stories about how she had faced down pirate ships and negotiated with alien warlords without raising her tone. Some said she could win a battle with words alone. Whether these stories were true or not, her crew believed them. In the mess hall, conversation always changed when Mara entered. A group might be laughing about a game of cards, but as soon as her shadow fell across the table, voices would drop. She would give a quick order or ask a question, then leave. Only after she was gone would the noise return. One person, however, found her fascinating rather than frightening. Tomas, a human engineer in his late 20s, had joined the crew only 6 months earlier. He was good with machines, quick to think under pressure, and not easily intimidated. While others avoided Mara, Tomas often studied her from across the room, curious about what lay behind the hard edges of her personality. That day, the Aurora was traveling through a quiet stretch of space. The crew worked on routine checks. In engineering, Tomas was replacing a coolant valve when he heard the sound of boots behind him. "Your maintenance report from last cycle was late," Mara said, her voice steady but firm. Tomas straightened. "I had to double-check the readings on the plasma lines, Commander. I wanted to be certain. Then send the report and add a note explaining the delay. I do not like to guess why something is late." Her gaze was sharp, but not angry. "Yes, Commander," he said. She turned and left without another word. Thomas watched her go, thinking that she was like a finely built machine, efficient, precise, and leaving no room for extra parts. Later that evening, Mara walked the length of the ship. She stopped to inspect the navigation charts with the pilot, reviewed the sensor data with the Vereen officers, and checked the repair schedules with engineering. Her rounds were a daily habit, and she never skipped them. The crew often wondered if she ever rested. In her quarters, Mara finally sat at her desk. The room was simple. No decorations except for a single old photograph of a small farm under a blue sky. She rarely looked at it, but it was always there. She opened the ship's log and typed in the day's events with the same precision she demanded from her crew. She noted a slight increase in background radiation near a certain star system and wrote a recommendation to adjust the route in future missions. She paused for a moment and thought about Thomas's delayed report. His explanation had been reasonable, but she wondered why he had looked directly into her eyes when answering. Most people looked away. She pushed the thought aside and returned to her log. Elsewhere on the ship, Thomas was telling another engineer about his meeting with Mara. "She's not as scary as people think," he said. "She just doesn't waste words." "You'll see," the other engineer replied with a shake of his head. "Wait until she really gets angry." The quiet in space was broken only by the steady hum of the engines. The Aurora moved toward its next mission, and no one yet knew that it would take them far from safety. Mara, standing in the observation deck with her hands behind her back, stared into the black distance. She felt the weight of responsibility like a constant pressure, but she would not show it. To her crew, she was the unshakable center of the ship, and so, the commander who could silence an entire room with a single look continued her watch, ready for whatever waited ahead. She did not believe in luck. She believed in readiness. Somewhere, deep inside, she also believed that the crew needed her to be strong every moment. She would never let them see otherwise. The Aurora drifted through the black ocean of space, its silver hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. In the command room, Commander Mara stood with her arms folded, listening to the voice of the communications officer. The officers. Hands moved quickly over the control panel as a faint, broken signal played over the speakers. It was a distress call. The message was old and full of static, but the words were clear enough to understand. "This is Delta Mining Outpost 3. We are under attack, requesting immediate assistance." The voice cut out suddenly. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The mining outpost was far from any major human settlement. Its location was on the edge of the Yevran border, a region known for pirate raids and dangerous alien activity. Few ships traveled there without heavy escort. "Signal origin?" Mara asked. The officer checked the readings. "Sector 19K, Commander. That's near the asteroid belt of the Varan system. The call is at least 12 hours old." Mara nodded, slowly. "Set course. Full speed." The pilot hesitated. "Commander, the Varan system is considered high risk. We may run into Yevran patrols." "If there are people in danger, we move," Mara said firmly. "Plot the safest route, but we are going." The pilot swallowed hard and began inputting the course changes. In engineering, Thomas felt the shift in the engines as the Aurora accelerated. He looked over the maintenance screens and saw the route projection flash across his display. His eyebrows rose. "We're going into Yevran territory," he said aloud. The other engineers muttered quietly. Everyone knew the Yevran were unpredictable. By the time the Aurora left its current sector, the crew had already begun preparations for possible combat. The weapons officers checked the plasma cannons. The SHIELD team ran diagnostics on the energy grid. The medical bay stocked extra supplies. Mara moved from section to section, inspecting every team. Her sharp eyes missed nothing. When she reached engineering, Thomas stood at attention. "Engines are stable. We can maintain full speed without overheating." "Good," Mara said. She studied him for a moment before speaking again. "Have you ever been in a Yevran sector?" "No, Commander." "Then stay alert. They do not fight like we do. They strike when you are least ready." Thomas nodded. Her voice carried no fear, only certainty, as if she had seen this all before. He wondered again what her past missions had been like. 2 hours later, the Aurora entered the edge of the Varan system. The asteroid belt hung like a jagged necklace around the pale star. Broken mining platforms floated among the rocks, their metal frames twisted. Several cargo containers drifted freely, spinning slowly in the void. "Scanning for life signs," the sensor officer reported. A moment passed before his voice returned, grim. No human life detected on the main station. Small traces of heat in the auxiliary tunnels, but it could be machinery. Mara stood at the main display, watching the rotating image of the mining outpost. "Bring us in closer, but keep shields at full strength. All stations prepare for boarding procedures." The Aurora's approach was careful. The asteroids made navigation difficult, and the mining structures were half collapsed. It was clear something violent had happened here. As they neared the main platform, the docking team prepared the airlock. Thomas joined them, wearing a sealed exploration suit. His tool belt carried both repair equipment and a short-range plasma cutter. Beside him, a Vereen officer named Raal adjusted the grip on his shock staff. Mara entered the room, her own suit ready. "This is a search and rescue mission," she told them. "We move quickly, we stay together, and we watch every corner. If we find survivors, they go to the Aurora immediately. If we find trouble, we fall back to the docking point." The airlock opened with a heavy hiss. Cold air from the mining platform rushed in, carrying the faint smell of burned metal. The team stepped into the dark corridors. Their helmet lights cut through the shadows, revealing walls marked with deep claw-like scratches. "Not human tools," Raal said quietly. His voice echoed in the helmet comm. Mara examined the marks. Spread of 4 claws, too deep for a standard cutting torch. Whatever made these was strong. They moved deeper into the station. Abandoned equipment lay scattered across the floor. A small transport cart was overturned, its cargo spilled. Doors hung open, their locking systems destroyed. Thomas checked. A wall console, but found no power. "Main generators offline. I'll try to reroute from the auxiliary grid." "Make it fast," Mara replied. As Thomas worked, the others stood guard. The silence of the station was heavy, broken only by the sound of their breathing. After several minutes, a few emergency lights flickered on, bathing the hall in dim red glow. The team reached the control room. A shattered viewport showed the blackness of space beyond. From here, they could see one of the mining towers had been torn apart entirely. "Any sign of the attackers?" Thomas asked. "Not yet," Mara said. She turned to Raal. "Place motion sensors in the main hall. I want warning if something moves." While the Vereen officer worked, Thomas noticed something strange. A faint trail of blood, not human, led away from the control room toward the lower maintenance decks. The color was dark blue, and the drops were thick. "Commander, over here," Thomas called. Mara came to his side and studied the trail. Her eyes narrowed. "We follow it. Stay close." They moved cautiously down a narrow set of stairs, lights scanning ahead. The trail led to a half-open storage room. Inside, they found signs of a struggle. Broken crates, deep claw marks, and scorch burns from energy weapons. In the corner, a body lay still. It was not human. The creature had 4 arms, dark scaled skin, and a face frozen in pain. Raal stepped forward slowly. "This is not Yevran," he said. "It is a Karuk. They are mercenaries, expensive ones." Mara's jaw tightened. "If someone hired Karuk mercenaries to attack this outpost, it means the target was important. This was no random raid." Before they could examine further, the motion sensors on Raal's wrist device began to flash. A low rumble echoed from the hall above. Something was moving, something heavy. "Back to the docking point," Mara ordered. "Now!" The team moved quickly, weapons ready. The sound grew louder, accompanied by the scrape of claws on metal. Thomas kept glancing over his shoulder, but the darkness behind them stayed still. Yet he felt they were being watched. They reached the airlock without incident, but the unease stayed with them as they sealed the door. Once aboard the Aurora, Mara ordered the ship to pull away from the platform. "Set a perimeter scan," she told the bridge crew. "I want to know what else is in this system." As Thomas removed his helmet, he saw the look in Mara's eyes. She was not only concerned, she was calculating. She already had a plan forming, and whatever they had just seen was only the beginning. The Aurora held position just outside the asteroid belt, its shields glowing faintly in the starlight. The wreckage of Delta Mining Outpost 3 drifted in the distance like a graveyard. Inside the ship, the crew worked in tense silence. No one liked being in Yevran territory longer than necessary. On the bridge, Commander Mara stood near the main display as the sensor officer reported new findings. Perimeter scan complete, Commander. I have faint energy readings coming from the far side of the belt. They are intermittent, as if the source is shutting down and restarting. Could it be survivors? Asked Thomas, who had been called to the bridge to help with technical analysis. The officer shook his head. Unlikely. The signal's signature matches a cloaked vessel. It is moving slowly, as if watching. Mara's gaze stayed fixed on the display. Can you identify the ship? Not with full certainty, the officer replied. But the power curve resembles Yevran's stealth craft. That was enough to put the entire crew on edge. Yevran's stealth. Ships were infamous for ambushing targets without warning. They often observed for hours before striking, studying their prey. Helm, Mara said, her tone calm but firm. Hold position. Make no aggressive moves. They expect us to run or attack. We will do neither. The pilot acknowledged her order. Mara turned to Thomas. I want you to work with sensors to track that ship. If it moves, I want to know within seconds. Yes, Commander, Thomas said. He moved to the console and began adjusting the sensor. Array, the Aurora's crew went about their duties with extra caution. Every sound seemed louder, every shadow deeper. The Yevran craft remained on the far side of the belt, but its presence was a weight pressing on everyone's thoughts. Mara left the bridge for a moment to check with the security team. In the armory, the weapons officer reported that all defensive. Systems were at full readiness. Plasma cannons were charged, and the missile bays were loaded. Mara inspected the targeting system herself, before nodding in approval. When she returned to the bridge, Thomas was still at the console, his eyes focused on the fluctuating readings. He looked up as she approached. Commander, the cloaked vessel. Just change position slightly. It's now in a better line to intercept us if we head toward the colony again. They are guarding something, Mara said quietly. Or someone. She gave a short command. Plot a secondary course that takes us around the belt. I want to see if they follow. The pilot entered the commands. Slowly, the Aurora began to move away from the colony wreck. Minutes passed, and Tomas kept his eyes on the readings. They're moving, he said, matching our change in position. Mara's eyes narrowed. Then we know it is no accident. They have chosen to watch us. She considered the situation for a moment before making her decision. We are not here to fight, but I want answers. We will return to the colony, quietly. The plan was risky. The Aurora would power down most of its systems, drifting on minimal energy to reduce its signature. This way, they might slip past the Yevran's detection. Thomas coordinated with engineering to reroute power flow. Lights dimmed, and the hum of the engines faded to a low whisper. The crew moved carefully, aware that sudden noise could carry through the ship's structure. Hours later, they were back near the mining platform, hidden in the shadow of a large asteroid. From here, the view of the wreck was sharper. Thomas used a handheld scanner to sweep the station from the Aurora's viewport. Commander, he said, I'm detecting faint life signs. Very weak. They're coming from the lower maintenance decks. Mara straightened. How many? Only one, maybe two. Could be injured. The decision was instant. Prepare a small team, no more than 4. We go in and bring them out. Tomas was on the team again, along with Raal and a human, medic named Lena. They suited up and boarded the shuttle. Mara piloted it herself, guiding it carefully through the asteroid field. The shuttle docked with the mining platform's lower airlock. Inside, the corridors were even darker than before. Their helmet lights revealed damage everywhere. Pipes, split open, cables hanging loose, and scorch marks on the walls. They followed the scanner's readings to a sealed storage compartment. The door had been locked from the inside. Mara tapped the comm. This is Commander Mara of the human vessel. Aurora, if you can hear me, stand clear of the door. No reply came, but the scanner confirmed movement inside. Thomas activated the plasma cutter, and in minutes, the door slid open with a groan. Inside, crouched in the corner, was a man in a mining uniform. His face was pale, and his breathing was shallow. Beside him lay a young alien woman with silver skin and closed eyes. Lena knelt at once, checking their vitals. Both alive. The man is dehydrated and exhausted. The woman has a serious head injury. We take them now, Mara ordered. As they lifted the survivors, a deep, metallic sound echoed through the hall behind them. It was not the hum of machinery, it was the slow, deliberate step of something heavy. Contacts, Ral said, raising his shock staff. The shadows shifted at the far end of the hall. A shape emerged, tall, broad, with glistening black armor. Its head was low, its limbs long, and in its hands was a weapon unlike any human design. "Move!" Mara commanded. The team advanced quickly toward the airlock, carrying the survivors. The creature followed, its pace unhurried, as if certain they could not escape. Thomas glanced back just once and saw its eyes, cold and pale, like ice. He turned forward again, his grip tightening on the miner's arm. They reached the shuttle and sealed the hatch. Mara launched them away from the platform, weaving between asteroids. The creature did not pursue, but Thomas had the feeling it was still watching. Back on the Aurora, the medical team took over. Mara stood in the observation room, watching as Lena and the other medics worked on the survivors. She turned to Thomas. "That thing on the station, it was not Yevron." "No," Thomas agreed. "But it knew we were there, and it did not stop us." Mara's expression was unreadable. "Then it was sending a message. The question is, to us, or to someone else." The Aurora's medbay was quiet except for the steady beeps of monitoring equipment. The rescued miner, a man named Cal, lay on one bed with an oxygen mask over his face. The silver-skinned alien woman rested on another, her breathing shallow, but steady. Lena and her team worked carefully, keeping both patients stable. Commander Mara stood at the doorway, arms folded. She studied the survivors without speaking. Every detail mattered. Injuries, clothing, even the way their tools were worn. Clues often hid in the smallest things. Thomas entered quietly, holding a data tablet. "Engineering just finished analyzing the station's damage patterns," he said. "You should see this." Mara took the tablet and scanned the report. Her eyes narrowed. "These marks do not match any known Yevron weapon, and the hull breaches, too precise to be random." She looked at him directly. "Whatever attacked the outpost knew exactly where to strike to disable it," Thomas nodded. "That thing we saw, it could be one of them." "Could be," Mara replied, "but I do not make conclusions without proof." They stepped into the corridor together. The ship's lights dimmed as they passed into the lower maintenance deck. This area was quiet, far from the busy bridge and medbay. Only the hum of the engines filled the air. "Why are we down here?" Thomas asked. "I want to check the auxiliary power grid," Mara said. "If we are being watched, we cannot afford any weakness in our systems." She led him into a narrow service tunnel. The walls were lined with cables and glowing conduits. The air was warmer here, the heat from the engines pulsing through the metal. Mara moved with practiced steps, scanning the readouts on each panel. Thomas followed, but his thoughts were elsewhere. He had worked under many captains, but none like Mara. She carried herself with absolute control, yet there were moments, quick, almost hidden, when her eyes softened or her voice dropped in tone. He had seen one of those moments back at the medbay when she looked at the injured alien. It was as if she knew more about the situation than she wanted to admit. A sudden flicker passed through the lights above them. The tunnel went dark for half a second before the emergency strips lit up along the floor, casting a red glow. "Power fluctuation," Tomas said, already checking the nearest panel. "Keep working," Mara replied, her voice calm. As Tomas opened the panel to reroute the current, the shadows seemed to grow heavier around them. The hum of the ship felt distant, almost muffled. Mara stood nearby, scanning the darkness ahead. "Do you think that thing from the station followed us?" Tomas asked quietly. "If it did, we would know," she said. "But that does not mean others are not watching." The lights flickered again, and for a brief moment they were in complete darkness. In that moment, Thomas felt a strange pull, like the space around them was holding its breath. Then the lights returned. He stepped back from the panel. Power should be stable now. Mara glanced at the readout and gave a short nod. "Good. That will hold for now." They started walking back, but the narrow space and dim lighting created a strange sense of isolation. The rest of the crew felt far away. It was just the two of them, surrounded by metal walls and the quiet pulse of the ship. Thomas decided to speak. "You know, most people on this ship are afraid of you." "I am aware," Mara said without slowing. "But I'm not," he added. She stopped and turned slightly toward him. "Why not?" "Because I think you act tough to keep everyone sharp, not because you enjoy it," Tomas said. "And because I've seen how you watch over the crew when they're not looking." Her eyes stayed on him for a moment longer than usual. "Observation does not mean sentiment." "Maybe not," Tomas said with a small smile. "But it means something." They resumed walking. The tunnel narrowed ahead, forcing them to pass close to each other. Thomas could see the faint lines of wear around her eyes, the kind that came from years of carrying more weight than most people could handle. "Commander," he said, his voice softer now. "You're so beautiful." For the first time since he had joined the crew, Mara did not have a ready reply. She stopped, her eyes locked on his. The silence stretched between them. Her expression did not soften, but something in her gaze shifted, less steel, more depth. Before she could respond, the ship's alarm blared through the corridor. The red lights brightened, and a voice came over the comm. "Commander Mara, report to the bridge immediately. We have incoming contacts." Mara turned sharply and started toward the nearest lift. "Move, Thomas." He followed, but the image of her silent reaction stayed in his mind. It was not just surprise he had seen. It was a crack in the unshakable armor she wore every day. They arrived on the bridge to find the crew at full alert. The sensor officer pointed at the display. "Multiple ships, Commander. No identification. They came out from behind the far asteroids." Mara studied the readings. "Are they armed?" "Yes, but weapons are not yet powered," the officer replied. "They are closing in slowly." Thomas stood at a side console, monitoring engine output. The ships on the display moved like predators circling a target. There was no communication, no signal, only silent approach. "Helm," Mara ordered. "Keep us at current position, but rotate the ship to face them. Shields to maximum. Weapons ready, but hold fire." The crew moved quickly to carry out her commands. On the screen, the approaching ships spread into a loose formation, surrounding the Aurora. The silence was heavy. Finally, a signal came through. An unencrypted channel. The voice was deep, speaking in a language Thomas did not know. Ral, standing at the communications panel, translated. "They say they have no interest in fighting. They want to speak with our commander privately." Mara's gaze was steady. "Tell them I will speak here, on an open channel." Raal relayed her words. A pause followed, then the voice returned, slower this time. "They insist it must be face-to-face." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. Thomas looked at Mara, but her expression revealed nothing. "Open a secure channel to my quarters," she said. "If they want a private talk, they will have it on my terms." The ships outside held their positions, waiting. As Mara left the bridge, Tomas had the sudden feeling that whatever was about to happen would decide more than just the outcome of this mission. Mara's quarters were dim, lit only by the blue glow of the secure comm screen on her desk. The voice from the alien ships came through in a low, measured tone, translated into human speech by the ship's system. Commander Mara of the human, Vessel Aurora. You have something that belongs to us. Mara did not sit. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back. You will need to be specific. The silver-skinned female you removed from the mining outpost. She is a target of great value to our people. Return her, and you will be allowed to leave unharmed. Mara's expression stayed unreadable. Your people attacked a human facility. That makes this a matter between you and the United Colonies government. If you have a claim, you can bring it to them. You are in our territory. We do not ask twice. The transmission ended abruptly. The comm screen went black. Mara stood in silence for a moment, then tapped her wrist comm. Bridge, status of the alien vessels? Raoul's voice came back. Still holding position. No movement toward attack. Maintain readiness, Mara ordered. She closed the channel and turned toward the door. Thomas was waiting in the corridor, outside. He had clearly been trying to look casual, but his eyes gave away his curiosity. So, what did they want? They want the alien woman we rescued, Mara said plainly. They claim she is theirs. Thomas frowned. And you're not going to give her to them. That is correct, Mara said as she started walking toward the medbay. She is injured and under our protection. Handing her over is not an option. Thomas matched her pace. They're going to come for her. Then they will find we are not an easy target. In the med bay, Lena was monitoring the alien woman's vitals. The woman's silver skin caught the light in strange ways, and a faint glow seemed to move under the surface. Her breathing was steadier now, but her eyes remained closed. Cal, the miner, was awake and sitting up. His voice was rough from dehydration. You have to keep her safe, he said as soon as Mara approached. They will kill anyone who stands in their way. Who are they? Mara asked. Cal shook his head. I don't know their name. We just called them the Silent Ones. They don't speak much. They don't fight for territory like the Yevran. They take specific people or objects and vanish, always without warning. Why her? Thomas asked. Cal's gaze shifted to the woman. She's not from the outpost. She arrived 2 weeks ago. Said she was looking for something in the asteroid belt. Never said what. But the moment she showed up, strange things started happening. Equipment failing, people disappearing. Then those things attacked. Mara studied the woman closely. There was no sign of weapons or tools. Just a plain travel suit and a thin necklace with a small black crystal. It looked ordinary, but something about it drew her attention. She turned to Lena. Prepare her for transport. If the Silent Ones want her, we are moving her to a secure section of the ship. Lena nodded and began readying a stretcher. As Mara and Thomas stepped back into the corridor, the ship's lights flickered again. This time, a low vibration rolled through the deck, as if something large had brushed against the hull. Rel's voice came over the comm. Commander, the alien vessels are moving. They are closing in slowly. Mara tapped her comm. Bring shields to full power. Prepare evasive maneuvers, but do not fire unless fired upon. Aye, Commander. They moved quickly toward the bridge. Thomas kept glancing at her as if trying to read her thoughts. Finally, he spoke. You know, most captains would have already agreed to the exchange to avoid a fight. Mara didn't look at him. Most captains are not me. That's true, Thomas said. He hesitated, then added, It's not just that you're tough. You have this way of making people believe you'll win, no matter the odds. I don't know if you see it, but you're so beautiful when you fight for something. Mara slowed her steps. His words hung in the air between them. The hum of the engines and the distant murmur of the crew faded for a moment. She turned, her head slightly, meeting his eyes. For once, no sharp reply came, no correction, no dismissive comment. She simply looked at him, as if weighing something she could not measure in orders or strategy. Before either could say more, the bridge doors slid open and the moment was gone. The alien ships now filled the main display, dark shapes against the asteroid field. They were close enough that the crew could see the faint shimmer of their energy fields. "They are hailing us again," Raoul reported. "Put it through," Mara said. The same deep voice came over the speakers. "This is your final chance. Give us the female, and we will let you go." Mara stepped forward. "You attacked a human facility and injured civilians. The woman stays with us. If you wish to take her, you will have to go through this ship." There was no reply. The alien ships began to shift position, forming a tightening circle around the Aurora. "Shields holding," the tactical officer said. "Weapons ready." Mara's voice was steady. "Stand by. They want us to panic. We hold our ground until they make the first move." Minutes passed. The alien ships kept their distance but made no attack. Instead, they began releasing small spherical drones that drifted slowly toward the Aurora. Thomas checked the sensor readouts. "Those aren't weapons. They're scanning us." "Let them scan," Mara said. "They will find nothing they can use." The drones moved around the ship, their surfaces reflecting the faint starlight. Then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, they turned and flew back to their ships. The alien vessels began to withdraw. "They're leaving?" Thomas asked in surprise. "For now," Mara said. "But this is not over. They will come again when they think we are vulnerable." As the crew relaxed slightly, Thomas looked at Mara again. She was already focused on the next step, her mind moving faster than the situation. But he knew that for one brief moment earlier, his words had reached her. 3 days passed since the Silent Ones had pulled back. The Aurora stayed in the asteroid belt, using the rocks as cover while the engineers repaired minor damage and reinforced the shields. The rescued woman still slept in the secure medbay, her vitals steady, but her mind locked somewhere far away. Mara spent those days watching every sensor feed and reading every report. She knew the enemy had not given up. On the third night cycle, alarms broke the silence. Multiple warp signatures detected. Raoul's voice echoed across the ship. "It's them, and they are not alone." Mara reached the bridge in seconds. The main display lit up with new contacts. 10 alien ships this time, larger and heavier than before. They surrounded the Aurora in a wide arc, their hulls glowing with strange markings. Thomas stood at tactical, his eyes scanning the data. They came prepared. They brought a war fleet. Mara's voice was calm but sharp. "Battle stations. All hands to positions." The crew moved with controlled urgency. Weapons hummed to life. The ship's shields shimmered faintly. The Silent Ones hailed them again. The same deep voice came through the speakers. "We gave you your chance. Now, you will surrender the female, or you will be erased." Mara stepped forward. "You will have to erase a lot more than this ship to take her from us." The channel cut. The alien ships began to move. "Impact in 20 seconds, Thomas called out. "Hold steady," Mara ordered. "Fire on my command." The first barrage of energy beams struck the Aurora's shields. The deck shuddered under the force. Warning lights flared, but the shields held. "Return fire," Mara commanded. The ship's cannons roared, sending streaks of light across space. 2 of the smaller alien ships were hit and spun away, but the rest closed in fast. From the starboard side, a volley of strange projectiles shot toward them. They hit the shields and exploded in bursts of blue light. Systems flickered. "Shields at 70%, Raoul reported. "They are trying to weaken us before boarding," Mara said. "Prepare for close combat." Thomas glanced at her. "If they board, they'll go straight for the medbay." I know, she replied. We won't let them reach it. Another hit rocked the ship. This time, a piercing alarm rang from engineering. Hull breach on deck 5, a voice reported over comms. Automatic bulkheads in place. No loss of atmosphere. Mara turned to tactical. Target their lead ship. Full power to forward weapons. The Aurora unleashed a focused barrage. The lead alien vessel's shield flickered and collapsed. Seconds later, a direct hit tore through its hull, sending debris spinning into the asteroid field. But the enemy adapted quickly. 2 ships broke formation and moved toward the Aurora's flank, releasing small, fast drones. They're trying to cut off our maneuvering, Thomas said. Not if we take the fight to them, Mara replied. Helm, bring us around. Close. The gap. The Aurora surged forward, slipping between 2 enemy ships before they could lock weapons. The cannons roared again, forcing the enemy to scatter. Then, without warning, a deep vibration rolled through the deck. A voice came over the internal comms, Lena's voice, full of urgency. Commander, they've teleported boarding units directly into the medbay corridor. Mara's eyes narrowed. Tomas, with me. Ral, you have the bridge. They ran through the ship's corridors as red lights flashed overhead. The sound of distant weapons fire echoed from the lower decks. When they reached the medbay hall, the fight was already underway. Marines in armored suits were holding a line against tall, shadow-like figures. The silent ones moved with unnatural speed, their armor shifting like liquid metal. Thomas took cover behind a bulkhead and opened fire with his rifle. One of the invaders fell, its body dissolving into a cloud of black particles. Mara charged forward, blasting another before it could reach the door. "Hold this position!" she shouted to the Marines. A sudden crash of metal drew her attention. One of the silent ones had slipped past the defenders and was forcing the medbay door. Mara sprinted. The alien turned, raising a blade-like arm, but she ducked low and drove her shoulder into its midsection. The impact knocked it back. Thomas fired a precise shot into its head, and it disintegrated. Inside the medbay, the silver-skinned woman was awake. Her eyes glowed faintly, and her expression was calm, almost too calm for the chaos outside. "You should not fight for me," she said in a voice that carried a strange, melodic tone. "We're not giving you to them," Mara replied firmly. The woman looked at her for a long moment. "They will keep coming. Not for me, for what I carry." She touched the black crystal at her neck. "It holds a key to something they fear, but they cannot destroy it themselves." Before Mara could ask more, another explosion rocked the ship. The medbay lights flickered. "Commander!" Raoul's voice crackled over the comm. "We are taking heavy damage. Recommend immediate retreat." Mara glanced at Thomas, then at the woman. "If we jump to warp, can they track us?" The woman shook her head. "Not if I shield the crystal. But I will need direct access to your power core." "Then let's move," Mara said. They escorted her through the ship, fighting through 2 more skirmishes with boarding units. Each time. The woman stayed behind them, her gaze distant, as if she was focused on something far beyond the ship's walls. When they reached engineering, she placed the crystal against the main reactor housing. A wave of light spread across the walls, and the humming of the engines deepened into a low, steady tone. "They cannot follow now," she said quietly. Mara tapped her comm. "Bridge, prepare for warp. Plot a course to deep space, maximum distance. Aye, Commander." Moments later, the Aurora leapt into warp. The stars stretched into lines, and the alien fleet vanished behind them. The crew slowly relaxed, but Mara knew this was only a pause in the fight. She turned to the woman. "You're going to tell me exactly what that crystal is and why they want it." The woman met her gaze. "If I do, you will have to make a choice that will change everything for your people." Mara did not flinch. "Then I'll hear it." The hum of the engines filled the room as the ship sped into the unknown, carrying a secret that had just become the most dangerous thing in human space. The Aurora raced through the dark stretch of uncharted space. The crew worked in quiet focus, repairing damaged systems and sealing the scars from the recent battle. Outside, the stars seemed calm, but Mara knew the enemy was out there, searching in the engineering bay. The silver-skinned woman stood beside the glowing reactor. The black crystal at her neck pulsed faintly, as if alive. Mara stepped forward. "It's time you told me what this is." The woman met her gaze. "My name is Lyra. I am not from your part of the galaxy. My people created this crystal long ago, but we feared it. It holds a code that can awaken something hidden, a weapon beyond any fleet's power. The Silent Ones want it to rule all. Space." Thomas leaned against the wall, listening. "So this weapon is real?" "It is real," Lyra said. "But it does not only destroy, it can also heal entire worlds, make them bloom again after war. That is why it is dangerous. In the wrong hands, it becomes a chain. In the right hands, it becomes hope." Mara crossed her arms. "If it can save lives, why not use it?" Lyra's voice softened. "Because to awaken it, someone must bind themselves to it forever. That person will never be free again. They will live, but as part of the weapon, unable to return." The words hung heavy in the air. Before Mara could answer, Raял's voice came over the comm. "Commander, I am detecting an energy surge, multiple warp signatures, closing fast." Mara's jaw tightened. "They found us." The ship's alarms began to wail. On the bridge, the tactical display showed a wall of ships, far more than before. 20 vessels formed a tightening net around the Aurora. "They brought their full fleet," Thomas said. The enemy voice returned, cold and steady. "This is the last time. Give us the crystal and we will leave your ship intact. Refuse, and all aboard will be erased." Lyra turned to Mara. "They cannot follow us if the weapon awakens, but if I do this, I will be gone. Forever." Mara's thoughts raced. She had seen enough wars to know the Silent Ones would never stop. If they got the crystal, they would crush every free world. She met Lyra's eyes. "There has to be another way." Lyra shook her head. "There is no other way." The ship shuddered under the first enemy barrage. Shields dropped to 60%. Mara turned to Thomas. "Get the crew ready for evacuation, just in case." Thomas hesitated. "And you?" "I'm staying here," Mara said. Lyra stepped closer. "If you are thinking what I fear, I cannot allow it." Mara's voice was steady. "If this thing needs someone to bind to it, it should be someone who can make sure it's never used for the wrong reason. That means me." Lyra studied her for a long moment, then finally nodded. "Very well. But once the bond begins, there is no return." Another hit slammed into the ship. Warning lights flared. The bridge reported hull damage on multiple decks. Mara looked around the engineering bay one last time at the crew who had trusted her through every fight. Then she stepped up to the reactor, placing her hands on the crystal. It flared with blinding light. A pulse shot through the ship, knocking Thomas to his knees. The noise faded into a deep, steady hum. Lyra's voice became distant. "The bond has started. Focus on your purpose. It will shape the weapon." Mara thought of Earth's oceans, of colonies struggling to breathe under poisoned skies, of children growing up in the shadow of war. She thought of giving them a future where no one lived in fear. The light grew until it filled the room, spilling into the corridors, then bursting out into space. The enemy fleet halted as the wave of energy washed over them. Their weapons flickered and went silent. From the Aurora's bridge, Rayal stared at the display. "They're ships. They're shutting down. All of them." The wave kept expanding, pushing the Silent Ones back. Then, as quickly as it had come, the light faded. In the engineering bay, the crystal was gone. Where Mara had stood, there was only a faint shimmer in the air like heat on a summer road. Lyra bowed her head. She has become the keeper. The weapon is safe. The silent ones can never claim it now. Thomas's voice was tight. Where did she go? She is everywhere the crystal's power reaches, Lyra said softly. She will see all, guard all, but she will never return in the way you knew her. The comm crackled. Commander, the enemy is retreating. Thomas closed his eyes for a moment. Then she did it. The Aurora drifted in the quiet that followed. The crew began repairs, their movements slower, heavier, but with a sense of deep respect. Lyra prepared to leave the ship, saying she would travel to worlds that needed healing, using what fragments of power she could still control. Before she stepped into the shuttle bay, she paused. She chose this for your people, Lyra said. Guard your freedom well, or her sacrifice will mean nothing. The Aurora watched her small vessel vanish into the dark. In the silence of space, far beyond where any ship could reach, Mara's awareness moved like wind over the stars. She felt the pulse of worlds, the breath of life on each planet. She could no longer touch them as a person, but she could protect them.